Hello, how are you going?
Good morning. We're about to start shortly. We've got Councillor Michael Laws online, and everyone else bar Gary is here. So we're ready to start. Morena, and welcome to the Environmental Implementation Committee meeting for the 9th of August 2023. We'll start with a kia kia. Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki waho, tuia ki roto, tuia ki te hare tangata, ka rongo te po, ka ronga ta o, homie huie, taki. Now, welcome Gary, nice to have you on board.
Morning everyone.
Morning, we've got a full house, well done. Full. So no apologies. Public forum, we've had no requests, unlike last time when we were very busy. So confirmation of the agenda. I haven't been advised of any additions or changes of orders. Everyone's happy. Have to confirm the agenda. This is very good. No, has anyone got any changes to their declarations of interest? No appointments or changes or shareholdings that one wants to expose themselves to. Very good. The confirmation of the minutes. We've got the minutes circulated. Thank you, team, for the 11th of May 2023 meeting. You're happy with them, Brian, since you chaired that?
Yeah.
Anyone wish to make any comments? I'm happy to move them. Seconded.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. No discussion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against. Carried. Open actions. We've got one open action, and I think you've circulated your chair's request for funding. Did we get it for just noting the, I think that's your letter to various ministers?
For jobs for the manager. Yes, we did have a reply on that, which was just that it'll be handled through the appropriate ministries rather than through the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. There was at least an attempt to support support those great programs, and that is absolutely government funded projects. So it gets us on to matters for consideration. Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Palmer and staff. We've got Anna Malloy on 8.1 prioritisation of projects, and I think we probably say that this is a paper that's come out of, hello Libby, apologies. This is a paper that came out of the last long-term plan council, where we added in 3 projects being Tomahawk, Lake Hayes and Tuakitoto, and we did that purely ad hoc, but we wanted a process to, and we limited your paper somewhat by the wording, saying it had to be degraded waterways, and in that context, there's been a lot of central government changes to the to contend with as well. So this is a project started 3 years ago, really, and now being reported back for informing our long-term debate. So, what would you like to add to that?
I don't have anything else to add to that, I don't think. So just trying to seek the mandate to create a ranked list of degraded waterways across Otago. That's the purpose of this paper, and there'll be subsequent steps undertaken in the future around what actions or projects we actually develop based on that information, because we don't have that at the moment.
Thank you. Any questions of staff about this paper? Alexia, you're looking like you're going to.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the options. It seemed like there might be others. Are they on page 12, I think? I'm wondering if there's, I wondered if we were falling into the trap of looking for quick wins and not necessarily considering what's best, like especially when there's long-term declining degradation. would things like that be missed? Just wanted a bit more explanation about how we got to those options.
Yep, through the chair. When you mean long-term declining degradation, do you mean trends?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things we looked at first was the principle behind the fixing of waterways, water quality, where it's either in fair or good condition, but it's showing a decline. And you know, the old adage, a stitch in time saves 9 is quite correct. The state of the environment water quality monitoring we have, as you may receive through the science papers previously, shows that the trend data is only for several, quite a few, but not more than, or I don't have the exact numbers, but we don't have trend data for many of our catchments for our sites. So if we worked on trends and that decline, we would miss out quite a significant amount of our water bodies in terms of the analysis. So we have, in any prioritization, we needed to pick an objective. We didn't pick objectives, sorry, we needed a driver, which is the long-term plan performance measure, and it uses the term selected degraded water bodies. So we went with that, and this is a process we can use for now and into the future, but we can adapt it as we get more information on board and as our plans come on board. So this enables us to undertake works now with a justification for where,
Okay.
while we receive more and more information.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Next is Alan.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I mean, I'm very much in favour of having a planned approach rather than just picking things out of the air. I had a couple of questions about the criteria for scoring. That's the table on pages 11 and 12. The second box there talks about highly ranked riparian ecosystem. So could you explain how did they get highly ranked?
There's a mapping or a product that ORC had undertaken a couple of years ago that is based on a system called Zonation, which is a well-accepted modern program that puts in a number of criteria that produces a list, if you like, of whatever the thing is that you're ranking based on those criteria. So Zonation in this particular case works on things like fragmentation, area of reach, presence or absence of certain species. And I could find that report for you. So that work was done for us, and it ranked our natural ecosystems as well as our riparian areas based on a number of criteria. And that ranking, if you like, gives you a top 10% or a top 30% or wherever you want that bar to be. The reason we're using that is it's region-wide. It is a desktop study. So like a lot of these things, the numbers that you end up with don't give you the answer. They give you a guide, a decision support tool rather than the answer. And that one there looks at your highly ranked ecosystems for the riparian, for the water body areas. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was also just going to ask about on page 12, where the ranking on scale and severity of the degradation. Now, there's a higher score, the smaller the catchment, the higher the score, which would appear to be counterintuitive, if you like. Could you give us your thinking around why it's ranked that way?
Yes, the idea there was that in terms of the feasibility, doing a smaller catchment or addressing a smaller catchment is something that's likely to be possible, whereas some of the very large catchments, and these are defined by where our monitoring sites are, as you probably know, so a subcatchment can be greater than 100,000 hectares. Depending on the issues, and this is only one of the criteria, but depending on the issues that may be causing that degradation, a large scale makes it much more expensive and difficult to address. So I guess it's about being able to do something.
Yes, no, I understand that. I guess there's also, if it's on a large scale, maybe it's more important, but I guess, as you say, it's only one of the criteria and it's in that second lot of criteria we look at too. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I'm really happy to see this report. I've been on the understanding for quite a long time that if we can identify and address our worst areas, then we will be solving a significant amount of their problems. And I also think if we can get some more transparency around it, it'll provide a better focus, for example, with catchment groups and this type of thing. Anyway, I've got two questions. The first one is the comms around it. You know, are we going to refer to it as, you know, these are our worst ones, most degraded, or are we going to refer to it as these are our priority catchments or priority areas, and need some focus?
So I think
As
that's a
opposed to
good question
degraded.
around how we communicate that, but we're not, this ranked list won't tell us that they're a priority area. There'll be further stages we need to go through around assessing if it's viable to do something. The next stage of work will need to be undertaken to figure out if they are a priority area for ORC to do something on. I guess, does that answer the question?
It's just really, you know, are we going to respond and say these are our worst, you know, most degraded, or are we going to say, actually, these are the priority ones and degradation is one of the factors?
Through the chair, and excuse me, I would say the latter.
Yeah.
I noticed the article in the paper this morning that said we're looking to rank the worst degraded. That's
Yeah.
not true. If you look at the criteria,
Yeah.
we're using degradation as one of the drivers to
The
find
step one.
that baseline, and then we're looking at another suite of criteria to look at why we would look at one over another.
Okay.
And we're only using some attributes to determine that whether they're the worst degraded, not everything we could look at. We're using nitrogen, phosphorus and turbidity as our measures.
Yeah.
But there's obviously other attributes we could use.
Cool. Thank you. I think you've answered the question. Through the chair, the second one is just this business about ranking. I think internally that's invited, you know, information, but externally, should we have a ranking list of this is the worst, this is the second worst, or priority, or should we just simply have a list? You know, have a list and say these are our priority areas, and we'll pick them off and we'll have our own internal ranking. I just think the comms around that.
I think it's really important to say that we own this project and that we did the motion. And perhaps the problem was with our motion when you're asking it. Yeah, they're addressing our
Possibly,
motion.
but
Yeah.
I mean, what's the staff advice on that? Like, are we going to go, you know, we've ranked this as the worst on degradation in socio-economic and ecological basis, or these are our 10 worst, and by the way, this is the first one we're focusing on. This is our key priority.
Again, I think it's not about saying these are the worst. It's about saying these ones are selected degraded water bodies.
Yeah,
And we, I think the wording in the paper reflects that we're looking for high, medium, low. So maybe there'll be 3 categories rather than a numbered list.
cool.
And internally, as you say, we will, as Libby has pointed out, the next stage is to actually look closely about resources and projects within those areas.
Cool. I'm really happy with those responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Yeah, thank you. I've got some quite serious concerns about this paper, so I'd like to be included early in the debate part of the discussion, but I do have questions.
Yeah, we go for the questions.
So-
Thank you.
Questions, I just, around the measures, I was struggling to work out whether high is good or low is good, whether high is good or low is bad. And because I see, there's 21 points and 12 of them are from 3 different, only the 3 categories. So just I just try and get my head around the last one, severity of degradation, because it says here, if you've got degraded long-term and declining, that's like you're giving it like a really low score. So that's a good thing.
No, sorry, it's the scoring there is tentatively at least that a 4 is a good score. It would raise it up the list in terms of ranking. And the reason for, sorry, I need my glasses on. I look at that one, long-term and declining, where our water bodies, yes, we are selecting degraded water bodies as per the performance measure, but where they've been below national bottom line for any of these parameters for a long period of time and still declining, the likelihood of being able to address that severity of the problem could well be beyond our means. So it is about this one, whilst it's called scale and severity, initially it's really underpinning that is some level of feasibility assessment.
So, and then you've got your second one, which Ellen mentioned, which is a completely new measure that I don't think any of us got any comprehension of whatsoever. And it seems to be ranking pretty highly, like on a measure that we're not even familiar with.
So which one's this? So
It's highly ranked riparian ecosystems.
yeah, thank you.
So I'm just wondering why that's been put in there.
Because the performance measure talks about, as I mentioned before, selected degraded water bodies, but it's about improving water quality and biodiversity. And that one is a measure of biodiversity.
We'll leave that. I do have some concerns, obviously. Have iwi been involved at this stage?
No, they haven't. I did reach out to them on Monday, but they haven't come back to me.
I might just leave it there. I'll just say.
You know, that's fine, and I appreciate your call to do the first motion. Thank you. Michael.
Well, first of all, good on the staff for bringing this paper. Governance have failed categorically in this issue. It's amazing. It's here 7 years after I got elected. This is our basic job. This is 101 Regional Council. So good on you. I'm not going to quibble about this. We just need to get on with it as quick as possible. Can I ask the staff, please? I see you're going to consult with iwi. That's on the next step stuff, and then we're going to presumably off we go and do this ranking. It's meant to be brought back for the long-term plan to work out what we, the governance team, are finally going to do, having sat on our hands for that long. So can I ask the staff, you'll have this ranking done by when so that we can feed it into how we're going to attack this beast? I mean, which degraded walkways we're going to provide funding for them. When are you expecting that paper to come back for our final consideration and then for our funding decisions around the degraded waterways that we're going to be trying to redress?
So hopefully we'll be able to come back with the list before November, so that then we can inform long-term plan decisions and considerations for the following year. But I'm also happy to hear if that is not quick enough.
Oh, no, but it doesn't matter. So you're thinking that we'll bring the paper back in November, you'll have your classifications affected by then, and then it's for us to determine which of those we can attack first and put the funding in for the next 3 years. Have I got that right?
The intention is to bring back the rank list to the November round. That then becomes part of your broader LTP discussions around priorities and funding and approaches to restoration and improvement.
So I guess what I'd like, if it's possible, when you do bring that list back, is some idea of how much it's going to cost, and the easiest ones to affect.
Michael, can I just check what Gavin's answer there, Dr. Palmer's answer, that the stage 1 will be completed, or that you won't have done all of the analysis, or are you talking about stage 2 and 3 haven't been completed?
No, I'm referring to stage 1, which is we bring back to you a list which applies whatever criteria you decide.
Yeah.
So it will rank water bodies.
Yeah.
That's the first deliverable, the only deliverable at the minute, which we've brought back to you for sign off, if you like, in November.
Yeah. So that's so I think what you're talking about, Michael, is part of is after stage 2 and 3.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't see any problem why they can't do that work now. So when they come back with that's why I'm raising the question.
So
When
you're
they-
asking the question, can they get to stage 3 before November?
Maybe
Well,
my sense is we can't get that information to the degree of confidence that we should have for a long-term plan process. The conversation for me is the level of investment the council wants to put it into on ground, addressing these issues. What sort of investment is set aside in the long-term plan for us to do these things? And it may not necessarily be it may not be applied to a specific water body at that time, because there would still be some work to do and quite a bit to actually understand what a work program might look like and what the cost would be. And I would be really hesitant to go out with something that we don't have a high degree of confidence in. I know exactly what you're asking, and in an ideal world we would be able to deliver that, but I'm not sure that we can by that. By the time we need to be making some of those decisions. What we can certainly do is guide that conversation for councillors to make a decision around what level of investment you want to make in the next stage of these of this water body, given that we're doing 3 at the moment and we've had some signals from around the council table that there's an appetite for more.
Yeah, I understand your answer, Richard. You can see our problem though, can't you?
Yep.
You're asking us to commit a quantum of money to a beast that's not defined. And what I'd like before we make those decisions, which will be next year, not this year, but will be next year, would be some idea of what the worst degraded waterways are that could take or could be, we could achieve something within that long-term plan time frame. That then means that we are going to have to be able to determine how much money we need to put aside in that 3 years to do that. And we'd be going into the long-term plan blind on how much money, if any, to put aside if we didn't have an answer to those sorts of questions.
Yeah, well, okay, understand and understand the request. So we need to talk to as staff as to how we might achieve that in a way that gives some transparency to what it is we might consult on, or to enable an informed decision to be made early next year when we get to that point.
Good on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the end of your questions, Michael?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Kevin?
So of the for the phosphorus, nitrogen and turbidity, I think we've got 106, 116 testing sites that we're working. We'll take those from.
I guess I don't have those figures ready, sorry.
So we were given a paper for the Land and Water Regional Plan with a working group that had all the target attribute states that we were trying to achieve, or that we had to achieve, and that gave us all the nitrogen, all those are on there. So what have you done as a sample to see how this prioritisation works and where it would land in those 100 odd?
We're waiting to get the criteria. We haven't done that analysis. Some time ago, I did do a desktop, my own little rough analysis to see how turbidity and phosphorus would pan out. I didn't use nitrogen at that point because phosphorus and turbidity were the ones that are more easily intercepted along the riparian zone than nitrogen, which tends to go through the ground and then enters the waterway through the subsoil. But with nitrogen in there, it's a quick matter of using the State of the Environment Report, looking at those where those attributes are below the national bottom line, having those lists and then applying the other criteria. So there's quite a bit to it.
The part that I'm really worried about is that we're look, this has got to be done. This has got to be done. But the part we've got all these horses running down the track at the moment going, and they possibly could all be going in a different direction. That's the real worry with me, because we've got our freshwater farm plans. We're attacking groups and working with them. We've got our integrated catchment management plans that are going, working with people. And then if we come up with a prioritisation that's going against those work streams that says we're working here in North Otago at the moment, but in fact our priority is going to be the rivers around Dunedin, and haven't got the Dunedin work starting for another 3 years. So the coordination of that is really, to me, is really, really scary. And I know this is only the ranking, but I just,
And the question is, because just behind you, and what you can't see is someone's had their hands up to answer that.
Right.
Yeah. So Tom.
Thank you. Through the chair, I what I just emphasise is that we have obviously worked with the EI team on developing these criteria, and have also been right in the middle of developing target attribute states, state and trend reports, and all of that sort of thing through the Land and Water Plan. We certainly have tried to make sure that there's not a whole lot of rework or changing of any of the material we've used for the Land and Water Plan for this process, rather just an application of it. So we'd be using the same material when we're looking at degradation, considering things like target attribute state, current state, and where that current state is against the bottom line as well. But all of those things are the same methods or way of thinking through the Land and Water Plan process. So you should see something that is quite well lined up, and certainly, you know, it's in anyone's interest to have those things pushing or pulling in different directions. We've had key staff from the science team, policy team, and EI team all kind of in the middle of something. So I think it should all line up nicely.
And sorry to have interrupted you, Kevin, but I hope that sort of
Yeah,
may
it does.
answer that question,
It
sorry.
probably reinforces the need that if we do this priority list and as governance, that's where we're going to put our money, that we actually cycle our work programs to suit that. So I'm not going to different communities at trying to do the same things.
So can I just ask a question then, it may help? So if we do this list as stage one, how we then use that list as maybe something that we need to change rather than the actual prioritisation itself? I mean, I'm getting the feeling that there is so much happening in this space, and there's so much money and people in the catchment space, but it's a prioritisation, which is actually what the motion from the last long-term plan asked for. And what stages 2 and 3 may be something that is, we're not actually dealing with stage 2 and 3 at the moment. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's just a list which ranks water bodies, which is an input to other processes where you will make decisions about where resources get allocated based on that and other factors such as community support, funding opportunities, and other things. Those are stages 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's right. And so we run the risk of starting to talk about priorities and you know, worst water bodies as a ranking. What this will do is give us a list of what our opportunities are alongside all of the other things that are going on. And absolutely, Kevin, there's a hell of a lot of them, and so we've got to be very careful that they're lined up. But this is as you've pointed out, Kate, at the request of council. I think it's good we do this work to give us an idea about, based on everything we know and the science work that's been done and the other criteria that are in here, what opportunities have we got if ORC chooses to make direct investment into water bodies in Otago? When we get to stages 2 or 3, there will have to be a hell of a lot of work done to understand community-led work already happening, other work programs we've got around, whether it's freshwater farm plans or ICM, other central government funding processes that are running through various catchment or central government agencies. So there's a huge amount of work still to do, but we need to at least get a framework around this list of water bodies to enable that conversation to occur.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I didn't want to take away again. Sorry, I think I've interrupted you twice, Kevin. Apologies.
No trouble.
Thank you. Lloyd.
Can I just follow up the question?
Sorry, I had Tim first, if that's okay, and then I think we're back round to the second time.
This question is just around I see this as a model, okay? It's a model, a decision matrix that helps you with your criteria. And it's got to this point where you've brought it to council, so it's pretty complete. So just what is the process around the reasonableness of this model, and does it work? Have you applied it across, tested it across any water bodies at all to sort of see what sort of result it gives you?
Only what I did some time ago when, like I said, I ran a spreadsheet across a number of criteria, which we've adapted since then. So no, I haven't run these particular ones. Having said that, you're quite right, as a model, it doesn't make the decision for you. There still needs to be, if you like, that reality check, sensibility check, which comes after we've got that ranked list and we come back to council.
So you're obviously confident in the outcomes that it produces?
Yes, it gives you, look, can't speak for these particular criteria, but it's very similar. Gives you a list, and from my personal knowledge, which is somewhat limited, it seemed reasonable. But like I said, the reality checking and having other people who know the region better from our science team and from the community, yourselves, I mean, having a look at that and making that sensibility thinking around it, because all models are just that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I did say Lloyd, but Gary's got his hand up now. Gary, can I just check with you online that you could hear both Tom when he was just not at the table, when he responded as well? And then you can
Yep. No, I could hear very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you go away, go for it for your question, I mean.
Go away.
Go for it as well. Apologies.
No, you're right. Thank you. The first question has come just from the discussion, actually, because it sort of surprised me in how the paper read. But so did I hear correctly that trend analysis or trend data is not going to be used in the selection process?
That's correct. At this stage, it's not proposed to be used.
Well, why is that?
Tom might have more information, but when I first was looking at this, the trend data is only available for a proportion of our monitoring sites. And I don't know if that's about 50% or so. It just didn't have the same level of coverage. So it would leave out many water bodies.
But wouldn't that be a supporting part of the puzzle for some, but not all, that would be of an advantage as opposed to leaving it out?
That's correct. And so if you look at that very last criteria around scale and severity, there's a bringing in the decline of attributes in there.
So there is a trend of some sort. Sorry, I think Tom's going to answer.
Yes, sorry, I just need to think this through clearly. So we've been thinking in terms of applying this process and applying scoring in that degradation space, that we would start with attributes that we hold for all sites. I think we hold trends, 10-year trends for about 40% of our sites, and 20-year trends, so sites and attributes, and a 20-year trend for quite a lot less than that. I'm not sure of the percentage. So what we do is start by considering the current state against target state and the MPS bottom line, because we can do that for all sites and all attributes that we hold. And then as we have trend information available, being able to apply that on top to provide extra confidence or not. But you'd still be able to consider it, absolutely be able to consider it. It'd just be a kind of secondary factor where it's available. Otherwise, as has already been said, we would be limiting ourselves to quite a select number of sites. Now this will change as time goes on. So, if we reuse this process in 3 years' time, 3 years after that, we'll have more and more sites coming on with trends, and eventually we'll be able to bring trends to the fore.
Okay. No, so what we are saying is that trends will be factored. It's just they won't be the overlying directive. So there will be the other attributes, the other parts of the process, but they'll support it. Richard gave me some more confidence, I guess, in that there will be some more robustness in the process as we get to the next stage. My next question is around just the process itself. We were saying that Mana Whenua hadn't been approached until Monday.
Excuse me, Michael, could you turn your mic off, please? Thank you.
Sorry, who?
Michael.
Me.
No, I want to pass you.
I told you to go away.
Yeah, go away and now turn my mic off. I'm not liking the calibre of my questions, obviously.
In the room here, we were hearing Michael's background noises, but he's now turned his mic off. Apologies.
My apologies.
Right, sorry, no. And my apologies for not being in the room. Look, my second question is just around in clause 31, we say building in Mana Whenua criteria is essential for this process. But then down in steps 36 and 37, we are saying that once we have our criteria approved here, it'll be shared with Mana Whenua. If Mana Whenua change the criteria or the process, will it come back to us for reconsideration, or does that become the new process?
Gary, I'm going to be suggesting that we don't do the first recommendation and take the words "if adopted" out of the second line, and then it still works, I think. So then we don't have that clunkiness. So we get the work is still done. We just don't adopt the criteria, if that makes sense. And that gives us much more flexibility at the next stage, because then we can, look, anyone who's done a job interview and you do these ranking things in priority order first, and then you think, actually, that didn't really give me what I wanted. You may change that ranking ourselves later on if we get that data. If that makes sense?
Yes, it does. No, that makes perfect sense. But I suppose my question still stands around it. At the moment, the paper as it stands, if your proposal fell over, the paper as it stands says that we would approve this. It would go to Mana Whenua, and they may change substantial parts of the process, but in what I read, it would not come back to us. But am I right or wrong with that?
If there are substantial changes, we will come back.
Process issue. So if it was to play out, Gary, and there was something adopted and there were changes made to that following further conversations, then it would need to come back to this table.
Okay, great. That gives me confidence. Thank you. That's the end of my questions. I can go away now.
The question, don't go away, please. The question I had, and sorry, I'm going to go back to Lloyd and Kevin, but was when you come back from stage 1, I presume that we will not just get the list, but we will get those rankings as well, and hopefully a geographic spread, so that we can assess whether it does sort of ring true to us, because, and especially given that some of those weightings may change or be suggested to be changed by Mana Whenua. Is that how you expected it to be coming back to us?
So are you asking for a map showing where they are instead of just a list? Is that what you're wanting?
I was hoping that because the geographic spread also goes to affordability, depending on how we rate that for this or do that stuff, and where those priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a helpful way, not just for us around the table, but for the communities to see.
Totally. Yep. So we can do both. We can bring a list with a map showing where those
high, medium, low.
Yep.
Which may, because underpinning all of this, we're also going to have a rating strategy to deal with it as well. Yeah. So it's, that's good, because that then sort of, it doesn't matter about adopting the criteria then necessarily, because if we don't adopt the criteria, you can still do the work, and we may have to decide then whether we need to change some of that. Yeah.
We still need a steer though.
We need a steer, and that would, but adopting it is a hard line, which I'm nervous because of that. We haven't got Mana Whenua on board yet. Sorry, I did promise you, Lloyd, for second round. I will keep my other questions later.
No, I just want to go back to the table, your environmental scoring table, because and following on from what Kevin was saying, how it aligns with their land and water plan, et cetera, because, and through the chair, probably to Tom, to be fair, like in the land and water plan, I've never ever seen us ranking riparian ecosystems as a, because this is being set up as being ranking our waterways for basically we're saying we're basically going from bad to good, our perception of the waterways. So that's sending a clear signal out there that this is the waterway, the one that sits on top, that's the one that we think is the worst. So we got to come back to science, because this is actually a science paper. So Tom, in the science field, do you rank, like when we're doing the land and water plan, I don't ever remember seeing ranking just based on breaking the waterways down into sections, or ranking ecosystems, or even for that matter, ranking threatened species within waterways when we're talking about water quality, because it's headed up here, environmental criteria for scoring water bodies. So
I think this is probably more of a question for the team at the other end of the table than anything.
Can I answer that? The way it's structured is we are aiming to rank selected degraded water bodies. So what we do first is identify what we mean by degraded. So anything that is below national bottom line for macroinvertebrates, nitrogen or phosphorus or turbidity is considered degraded. Then these next stages, table 1 and 2, we apply criteria that enables us to look at those in terms of our how important they are from a biodiversity or a threatened species point of view or a scale of influence, and how manageable they may be in terms of cultural social influence. So the degraded bit is not saying this is the worst and this is better. They're all considered degraded for one of those 4 parameters. And then we are ranking them for a series of other criteria. Does that make sense?
3 parameters, isn't it? Phosphorus, turbidity, and nitrogen.
And macroinvertebrates.
Yeah. So, and what ranking do each one of those? Does there have to be any one of them?
That's your first cull, if you like, your refinement of all of our 116 or so water bodies, and go which ones are degraded.
So
That's
you're
not
going to
ranked.
make that call as opposed to our science team.
No, the paper has pointed out that any of those 4 parameters
But you just said before
that are below
that
national bottom
Tom
line.
can't answer because you're.
No, he's answering that bit. That's the
So
easy bit. That's the easy bit. That's what science is informing. What this paper then is doing is a multi-criteria analysis on those degraded water bodies to identify which ones would we look at first.
And just to fill that out, you identified the ecosystem zonation, or riparian zonation parameter as an area before. So that would give you an idea of where you've got high quality ecosystems or where you've got ecosystems that should be have a high level of protection or a high level of intervention. So that sort of parameter gives you some more. So when, as the CEO said before, when you're talking about this list rather being about where our biggest opportunities, that starts to get factored in there.
So does that mean if a area has got lots of riparian planting, it's ranked highly as a 4?
The zonation mapping considers not necessarily planting, but existing native riparian vegetation. Yes.
So it's zoned to 4.
That's one of the criteria. And again, I'd have to bring.
So you're saying that's
send you the paper on zonation if you want to have a look at the details in there.
So I would have thought that was a good thing, but you're saying it's a bad thing.
No,
We're saying it's a good
That's a
thing
good
and we
thing.
should protect that. If
Yeah.
it's ranked highly, we should be looking to protect it from
So
a
we're not-
biodiversity point of view.
So
So how many of these rankings are actually to do with water quality and biodiversity, and how much is it to do with stage 2 and 3, as in the ability to put a project in place?
Well, at this point, we're focusing on stage 1, which is creating the list, and we would use this criteria to assist us to make the list.
But you're going to be also using the socio-economic criteria, the judgmental calls down the bottom.
Or we will be using Mana Whenua significance because we'll engage with them around it. Some of the other things may need to be, so community interest, we're not going to go to every community at once, but that is something we need to factor in as to whether a project can be successful or not.
So you're going to make a judgment call on the community?
We're not going to make a judgment call in the community.
Says you.
I think what we will do is we will do some sensitivity checks on some of these things and test how much influence some of those things have. So it won't necessarily just be a single list. It'll be some sensitivity checks on criteria if they were absent or present to see what's driving the list and what difference some of those sorts of things would make.
But I'm not going to make a judgment call on whether the community is ready on my own.
It's OCC, catchment advisors and other knowledge we have or expertise we can draw on for that kind of information. And you're quite right, it does say it's a judgment call. It's one of the parameters that goes in, and it is only one model. When we look at the list, it may be that criteria is not that useful, or it doesn't make sense to you, and we can adjust it.
Is that mentioned in the paper?
Which?
Well,
The OCC and catchment advisors, yes. The OCC catchment advisors knowledge and presence of existing catchment groups is there.
it's at the bottom of it, page 11.
Part of the data to use.
It's difficult because of the line splits during that box. So
And just to emphasize again, this on its own does not make investment decisions. This is one of the critical inputs to enable informed investment decisions to be made. And there will be a huge amount of work required in stages 2 and 3 to be confident, which is back to Michael's question right at the start, to give confidence around those investment decisions and the level of investment and how that investment is delivered on the ground, whether it's by us or others or however that might be. This is purely just the first step to enable those conversations to occur. So we don't, we don't want to overreach through this paper and make an assumption that this leads to investment decisions, because it doesn't. But in order to make those decisions, we've got to have some data. That's this process.
I think it's also helpful, Lloyd, is that the fact is, and making sure we give direction, which I think number 2 does give us, without adopting it now, we're not committing to definitely using this thing. It's just to get the first draft of the list to us, and then we can see, does it look like it works? I'm hoping. But I've got quite a few questions. I know Kevin's next, then we've got Richard, and then we've got Elliot. Kevin.
Yeah, look, I'm still very happy with the concept of what we're trying to achieve. I am really nervous about a word saying that we will come back to from mana whenua if the change is substantial, because I've got no idea what the word substantial is, and that could be as simple as one word to me, because we've made the decision. And I just wonder why we actually do need 36 in there, because we've got 37 saying once criteria is finalised, it will be applied using spatial data and staff and mana whenua input. And also on page 11, at the bottom of page 11 is mana whenua significance, and that goes on to explain their significance as well. So they're right through the whole process. So I simply can't vote for this if I now know it's going to go away. Someone else is going to critique it. That process should, if they're going to be involved, it should have been before.
And the question.
And the question is, why can we delete 36 and just do it as the process is? Well, I think it gives the same result, but it allows staff to carry on and do things. Otherwise,
That's the process that's been put up. We think it's appropriate given the partnership that we have and that we've committed to, and we've just been talking about that through our long-term plan and our focus areas. This enables us to have that conversation early in the process. Yes, there is then involvement right through the process, but I think it's important that conversation happens. Now, I don't think that 36 or 37, those are the steps that we believe are appropriate. So the short answer from me, from my position, is no, that is the process we are putting forward.
So just get a bit of clarity around this. If we don't adopt the criteria at the moment, and we just do 2, which will produce a draft list of ranked water bodies for further development of actions, does that set us back? It allows mana whenua to have their input without us having set the criteria, which I'm slightly concerned that we should have done that first. That brings us a draft, and I don't mind if that goes then to a science meeting before November, if that was available to then adopt the criteria. Would that be a process that we could hasten it up? But if it's a draft list, it is still a draft list anyway, even if we have adopted the criteria. The criteria at the moment is what we think is the best guess of getting the outputs we want, but we may actually see when we see the outputs that we actually, that just doesn't look quite right. Does that make sense? Yeah. If we don't actually adopt this now, does it really matter? You'll still have the draft lists that could be presented.
If we still get the steer to go ahead, apply these criteria, that's really what we're after. Until we get right into it, yes, there's always going to be room for improvement.
Yeah. And that just gives us a wee bit more flexibility that way, I think. So thank you.
I was wondering whether or not, because this, just as context, we're probably not the only council or organisation in the world or country that's looking at degradation at the moment. whether or not there, it suddenly occurred to me, is there another system for ranking degradation that's being developed? Rather than, it's hard to imagine that we would lead the way in developing a system on how to rank degraded waterways. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it seems as though something that NIWA or someone else would be looking at, particularly for the science side of it.
Who's that one for?
I can answer a little bit of that. The difficulty in any ranking or prioritization process is knowing what it is you're trying to achieve. In this case, we're not, and I apologize for being pedantic, we're not ranking degradation. We're identifying degraded water bodies and then ranking them for intervention, if you like.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I'm
there are other
identifying
processes
degradation.
that I've worked with in other parts in New South Wales where we use river styles, which is already a model process. It looks at recovery potential rather than what's already degraded. So it comes at it from a different angle. The constraints we had for this somewhat were in the long-term plan performance measure already that said it selected degraded water bodies. Again, taking on all the discussions here, looking at what is degrading, what is already good and is degrading would be ideal. One, that's not the outcome we're looking for. We may change that, of course, in the future. And two, we don't have that trend data for everything. So we've gone with what's achievable and still gives us an ability to move forward with a works program in the future. Having looked around other parts of New Zealand through desktop, I didn't find any other prioritization systems. No. Having said that, I didn't actually talk to every regional council either. So, but I did look on their websites and look through what they've done.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Richard. Elliot.
I was going to make the two motions.
I thank you, but I had indicated that I had a draft motion, I think, from Lloyd first. Sorry, if that's okay. Thank you. You didn't have a question? No. Thank you. Lloyd, didn't have a motion that you wanted?
I'd just like to, my motion is basically the paper lie on the table.
Okay,
And
that's a procedural motion. And A needs, so once you've done that, it needs, my understanding is it needs a seconder and it doesn't get debated. Is it correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. So you're going to put that motion?
I'm happy to second it.
Okay. No, and do you get, does he get to speak? It's just a procedural one, isn't it? But I think you need to justify why you.
No one gets to speak. Sorry.
Not in move. Thank you for that clarification, Michael. I know someone who knows the rules better than I do. Okay, I don't think I've got any other choice but to put the motion. So without speaking to it, that is the standing orders. That's my understanding. So I'm going to put the motion. I'm going to do it. Is anyone going to ask me now or in 5 minutes to do this by?
Could you just clarify the whole thing, please?
By division. Okay, it's going to be full, so I might as well do it from the start. Thank you, Carly. Is this your first one? Not.
Excuse me, Chair. Excuse me, Chair.
Could we please clarify the motion?
The motion is to lay the paper on the table, which is just, it comes back to the, do nothing at the moment, it comes back, and there'll be discussions presumably offline about what and how that paper presents. To be fair to the staff, I can't even do a debate. Yeah.
Councillor Forbes.
No.
Councillor Callagher.
Yes.
Councillor Laws.
No.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yes.
Councillor McCall.
Yes.
Councillor Methven.
I don't support this.
Councillor Noon.
No.
Sorry, can you say yes or no there?
No.
No.
Councillor Robertson.
No.
Councillor Scott.
No.
Councillor Somerville.
No.
Councillor Weir. Councillor Wilson.
No.
We have 3, 4, and 3, 4, and 9.
Against.
None against. Okay, that motion is lost. Thank you. Now,
Well, no,
Yeah.
second, it's done.
yeah, Elliot, you
Happy to move
move
both
both.
motions, yep,
Okay.
together.
Is there a second? Are you sure? No, Elliot doesn't want to change that. I'm
happy to
presuming.
move, but-
Sorry. Is anyone going to second Elliot's motion? Okay. Does. Yeah, no, that's fine. So would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I can speak to it now. So I think that sort of, as has already been said, this is just a first step. The criteria and stuff will come back to us once we have discussed with Mana Whenua within the LTP discussions, whether or not, even if it doesn't get changed in any way, it's still coming back to us at some point down the line. But touching on the criteria as an ecologist, it does make sense to me. The scale one that Alan touched on does sort of initially seem counterintuitive, but I think that as I understand it, it's not about the highest need waterway, or it's not about the worst or the best or the most degraded. It's just about where we can do the most good and have the biggest impact with the resources that we do have. And this is one of those work streams that has impacts for biodiversity, has impacts for resilience, has impacts for mitigation, water quality, our ecosystem services for both Mana Whenua and all of our communities. And so reflecting on our draft focus areas, it basically hits everything except for transport. Obviously, I think we do need to be careful not to duplicate any work or planning, and that the process we follow is the one that will get us the best overall outcomes. And it may be worth, as Gretchen touched on, talking to other regional councils about any work they're doing. But with that in mind, I fully support this mahi and the motions in question.
Thank you, Elliot. Alexa, did you want to, as a second, to speak to that now or later?
I'll wait till after.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to those, please.
Yes. Michael, then Gretchen.
As I said in my early questions, this is Regional Council 101. So it's taken 7 years since I've been elected to get to a position where you'd think we would have been on day one. This may be an imperfect resolution, but there's still a long, long way to go in this journey. And I don't want to delay it one moment, one iota, because as we talk now, waterways throughout the Otago region are degrading and we aren't doing anything about it. So we need to get there quick, work out how much money it's going to cost. Now, you know me, I don't like the role of Mana Whenua in anything. I don't like the role of unelected representative society. But I am, on this particular issue, I've got to be honest with you, the final decision is going to be made by the 12 of us. Mana Whenua are going to have an input, good on them, but ultimately it'll be our decision to make, our funding at the long-term plan, and our decision as to what those priorities should be. So I support this motion.
Thank you, Michael. Apologies, as chair, I have failed. I raised one issue, but in thinking I'd solved it, I haven't, and I wasn't expecting this motion to be quite as it is. I haven't fixed another problem. I think we don't have delegated authority to adopt ourselves, that we have to recommend to council to adopt, which this motion doesn't do. So either that would need to be slightly fixed.
I mean, that
Yeah, thank you. Apologies for not getting that right in my homework as chair. Apologies for that. Thank you.
Mana Whenua and stuff, and then it will come to full council.
The recommend, so it'll be the Environmental Implementation Committee recommends that council adopt.
Right, yeah.
Okay, that's the, thank you. Gretchen, apologies for that, interrupting your order of questioning.
I was going to mention that, so that's good you did. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for developing this model, as Councillor Mepham calls it, which is what it is, a decision matrix or model. It's really useful, I think, in terms of the first step, which is the objective, facts-based, science-type measures of assessing degradation. As has been mentioned, I do think it would be useful to have discussion nationally amongst some of our peers in terms of what others might be thinking in this space, because it is one that's common to all regional councils. But us leading the way and thinking about this space, because you have, as answered, thank you, done some research already. So looking at, are there other systems for doing this? No, there's not. Well, we need to get on with this. This is really important and quite basic, that first bit of putting in, hey, are we meeting what's acceptable standards or are we not? That's important to know. The next bit becomes more challenging in terms of the socio-economic variables, and that's where we do need to have a lot more discussion, I think, and we're not precluded from doing that. One of those ways will be through discussion with mana whenua, but yeah, we've heard a lot of points around the table too about just, yeah, you know, whether communities should have the chance to actually determine in their own FMUs, you know, how they want to proceed as well and what they want to invest in, I guess. So yeah, we need to have a really carefully constructed work program, and as our CEO has mentioned, that will come up with through this it's like a ranking system, opportunities for investment. And we have a lot of opportunities for investment across this council. As an ecologist, a key principle is that it's better to invest in the pristine, the really, really good systems before they get to the degraded actually as well. So you're coming in at ranking almost from the bottom and from the top. And also, as someone's mentioned, with trend too. So stopping things before they go on a degradation trend as well. So there's a whole lot of opportunities for investment, and we need to be part of that, and so do our communities. And I guess that's the way that it's complex, and we've got planning systems in place at the moment with our land and water plan, and those are really driven through community as well. So we're going to be needing to have these discussions together. So yeah. My main point is the science bit's easy, the next bit's not very easy. So I think also in terms of opportunities for investment, this isn't the sort of thing where you leap in and plant a whole lot of riparian areas and think that's fixing the problem either. Actually, you need to understand what the issue is, first of all, of why is this thing becoming degraded or is degraded. So you actually need to invest in research, essentially, to understand the problem really well, what's causing this, and then also what would the solutions be as well. And that's not a space that a lot of regional councils have actually been in. It's not. So we understand well the state, we don't understand well the issue or the solutions. So actually a big investment opportunity for us would be that before we even leap into fixing things on the ground, although some of that it may be very obvious as well. So yeah, there's a lot more thinking to be done. I agree with the CE that this will be a really good opportunity for us to think about as a council what the next actually 10-year program would look like for us. So thank you very much for bringing this. I think it's an important first step.
Alan.
Thank you. Yes, I think this is going to be really helpful for our decision making. As Michael noted, it may not be perfection, but if we're looking for perfection, we're never ever going to do anything. And it's clear it's not presenting us with a list of degradation, as Richard and Gretchen have said. Rather, it's giving us a list of opportunities, I guess, and to help us select from those opportunities when the time comes. So I think this is a good plan. Thank you.
Lloyd.
Yes, I'm going to speak against the motion. I think I have real issues with it, and it's mainly around the processes, I guess, and where we're at as a council. Because right now, I agree with Gretchen a lot in that we need to know there's two parts to the equation. Okay, first part is water quality, science-based equation. Okay, we've got a science team that can do that and do a really good job of it. We then have the second half, which is socio-economic equations, which is based on around things that are not to do with water quality in any way, shape, or form. It's only around where that community is and how we invest their money. So there's actually two separate equations, but by approving this, adopting this, it's not like what Gretchen says. It's not two equations. It becomes one equation, which is a completely new matrix. Okay. Now this completely new matrix has never been talked about before because it's not about what's being put up there as ranking for degradation. It's not ranking for degradation. It's ranking for the ability to perhaps to invest. And I don't know whether we should be the ones making that decision. That's another story. So, and now at the same time, we're going to have public with a land and water plan, which we want to be aspirational, who actually has targeted attributable states, which ranks water quality across many criteria, way more than what this one's criteria. So we've actually got all that information there. We just need to use it internally with it. So, but what we're going to do now is go out with another confused ranking system for determining water quality, health, and state and ability. Right when we're going to be going to our communities with long-term plan and trying to get aspirational targets coming up there, the community is going to become confused and they're not going to know where they are. They're going to feel like, some are going to feel like they've had the finger pointed at them, and some are going to feel like they've got a free ticket. It's just adding to a already confused field. So, make no bones about it. We're locking into, you're locking into an untested judgmental criteria for ranking of waterways. And I just can't buy into that. And we're locking into creating a list, and then we've got no background information on how we're going to communicate that list to the public or to the people. We've got no information and how we're going to mitigate the fallout, or even better, we've got no information on how we're going to make best use of the information to be able to get it be accepted and updated in the public or with the community. We're taking a road that puts us above our communities, and that's not a road that I'm happy to be living on. So we need to know that. You can't say we're going to do our list and then we're going to talk to our partners after we've made the list. We need to include the partners in making the list. We need to include everybody in making the list. We need to actually include our communities in creating the list, see what their rankings are as well. We need to know what we're going to do with what are we going to do with information, because information is very much it's going towards this next level, which has become all of a sudden top secret level, catchment action, a program of actions, catchment actions, which is going to be determined by us. That's the way it reads. So you can say that we will go to our communities and do it, but that's not what this thing says. It's not what it says to me anyway. So we need to revisit that stage, section 10, stage 2 and 3, because if we're adopting the report, we're actually adopting stage 2 and 3, which is develop programs of action and projects for the priority waterways aligned with as part of the CAP development process. So what is the CAP development process? Who's involved in the CAP development process? Who's going to implement the CAP development process? What are the rewards or the costs of not implementing the CAP development process? It's just, and then you've got the 11 stuff. So what we're actually doing is we're taking a whole lot of arbitrary information, then we're going to impose it on the general public without any testing or without knowing where it's going to lead. So I'm actually going out into my back paddock, and I'm going to read the front page of the newspaper, and I'm going to look up and see where the ranking for the Otago Regional Council's ranking for degraded water systems for future investment. Okay, and I'm not going to be real comfortable if I'm driving over that waterway every day. Okay, because it's not even a ranking on water quality, but that's not how it's going to be portrayed or how it is portrayed. Okay, so I think before you got to be, there's some good stuff in here, and I don't disagree, but I think the way it's been put together and presented, it's not ready to be approved at this stage. I'd be more than happy, we wouldn't want to do it now, so that's why I think we need to go back and do a little bit more work. And you have two rankings. We have a ranking for water quality, and we have ranking for ability to influence water quality, which is your second half. Okay.
Thank you, Lord.
Well, I have my 3 minutes.
You've had at least your 3 minutes, but look, what I'm just, and listening intently to you, I'm not quite sure if I got it, but are you suggesting that you have a subsequential motion, which would be to leave out the adoption of the criteria right now? Or do you have are you asking for us to take these parts of these motions separately?
No, I'll put if this fails, I'll put my original motion. Go back and do more work.
Okay. Is that a hand up, Kevin?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is. Yeah, look, I have two major reservations. Is that 36 that we're going back to Mana Whenua, and they haven't already been involved in this process. So if we truly do value this partnership, we should have delayed the bringing of this paper forward until the council meeting, which is not very far away, and ensured we had those talks with Mana Whenua, because simply if they look at this now and say, well, there's three things in here that we're not happy with, and why did you put them in anyway? So I think, yeah, at the start, they should have been involved right at the very start of that. This is truly our partnership. We are the decision makers, so we're making the decision now, and we're sending it away for someone to be able to change it. That's just absolutely not acceptable. And also we have so there's your answer there if you want to prioritise the rivers of North Otago, so I can do that. And I did that under land and water plan. I know we've got other criteria, but I actually do appreciate it. The fact that we have not got, we should have some examples of what this actually does look like, and how a river actually comes out. And we didn't necessarily have to rank them, but it would have been great to, and I'm saying this for all papers that come to us, so I apologise, I'm not having a crack at the writers of this, is that we should have, where possible, have examples of how these matrices actually work in practice. Because at the end of the day, if you haven't actually applied it to rivers and to what you're trying to do, is that model valid? So yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with the concept, but I think this paper's we're a month early because we haven't talked to Mana Whenua. We haven't got examples to show the people making the decision.
Thank you. I've got no one else with a hand up. Oh, I'm just going to speak and then I'm going to, oh, sorry, Gary, yes, so I didn't see that. Thank you, Ellen. I'm just going to say, because I think it may be helpful, I understand where Lloyd and Kevin are coming from, but I have to take ownership of this paper, and thank you, staff, for doing what the last long-term plan asked you to do. It isn't perfect, not because of the staff, it's because we gave an imperfect resolution, and there has been a heck of a lot of change happened in that space in the last 3 years. So acknowledging all of those, I do have an issue with how we incorporate advice from our partners, and that is why I will be putting these separately on the basis that if we don't adopt the criteria, because I think we're premature to adopt something that we haven't tested at all, acknowledging what Kevin just said, that if we get the criteria, take out the words adopted and two, because it won't, if it falls over, then we'll have a draft list, and that will give us a much surer place to adopt later, because it won't necessarily slow down that process. It also means that we can test the very sort of things that Lloyd has talked about, having concerns about how we weight that socio-economic stuff. If we get a draft ranking list, which is what the motion says anyway, and it doesn't feel like it's just right, then we can adopt the criteria or changes to those criteria at that point. I don't think it holds us up. So that is why I will be asking, and the chair, and I think I can do as chair, that we do these separately, and on that basis, if the first one falls over, that will be the case. Thank you, staff, for putting something up and to do this work. It is really hard to understand what we all expected 3 years ago. And I'm sure the debate 3 years ago, the people around the room have changed. So it was always going to be difficult to understand where the 12 of us were going to go with this. But on that basis, and I think answering all those other questions that I've heard around the table, that's how I see the way forward with it. I've got to 3 other speakers before you have your right of reply, if that's okay. Thank you. Gary, Brian, and then Alexa and Tim, sorry.
Thanks, Kate. I'll try to be brief. I'm in a similar camp to Kevin and Lloyd, I think, but I do support the concept of the paper, the direction we had asked for it. It is a step in the right direction. Yet again, we are supposed to be in a partnership, but the partnership for us always seems to be one-sided in that, Mana Whenua have only just been asked apparently on Monday about this. They get to see where we sit, they see the paper, they see the debate we have. We then, as 12 and supposedly partners, don't get to see the discussion that would then be followed by staff. So that to me isn't overly transparent. And I'm a bit concerned about the overall terminology that we are going in the right direction with the paper, but the criteria, the use of the term degraded and what it is actually applying to, there are some very, very good works being done out there by landowners, those associated with waterways who are trying to transform and move in the direction that they are being asked to do. I get the feeling they're constantly being kicked in the teeth, and you look at the Thompsons Creek people who have been kicked hard when they are doing some incredible work there following from some very concerning reports. So, we have been heading in the right direction, but it is concerning that we are doing it in this manner yet again at this table. So just highlighting that concern that it just seems to be a growing trend, even though trends don't seem to be the issue, but there is a trend at this table that we're asked to approve policy prior to actually having what its implications would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Brian?
Cool. I'm hoping that staff will listen to some of the points that have been raised by Lloyd and others, but I'll be supporting this motion. I actually think what's actually been put here, while it may be imperfect, is actually reasonable. We've come up with a list of the worst degraded waterways, and we've then overlaid it with socio-economic factors such as scale of influence, high rank riparian ecosystems, presence of threatened species, outstanding water bodies, mana whenua influence, cost sharing, scale. It seems to me that if we didn't overlay it, there'll be criticism that hadn't occurred, that, hey, we've identified the worst waterways, but some of them aren't practical for the following reasons. So there's been an endeavour to bring that in to the mix. Look, we're under a timeline, LTP. There's been an offer from staff to provide certain information by November. We're under the pump. I'm just looking at our history. We identified 3 difficult degraded waterways: Lake Hayes, Tuakitoto, Tomahawk. And yesterday in our workshop, we said we want to grow that list. Well, we need to get on with this. Everything we do will be imperfect. It will evolve, but nevertheless, we need to keep moving forward. I'm very happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Tim?
Yeah, I think this is a good step. It's a model that helps us make a decision, and that's better than not having any kind of model at all. It may be imperfect, but it is part of a process, and that process will come through to this council for further approval and input. Lloyd, I recognise your passion and your personal experience in all of this, but I don't think that we can afford to delay any process that leads to improvement of our waterways. So I'm going to be supporting this.
Thank you. Alexa.
Thank you. I'm supporting this, obviously, I second it. It's very important we get on with this work. I realise, Lloyd and Kevin, that it is complicated and that there are implications for budget and for social factors and for economic factors all to come in. And I'm also aware that there needs to be integration across other work streams, which won't always be easy, and we have to be careful not to duplicate work, but we need this process to get underway. It's a model for prioritisation, nothing more. It will feed into the information that we already have and will enable us to bring information together to prioritise and to get on with what we need to do. No issue with waiting for Mana Whenua, who are our partners, but we don't need to wait either. We can get on without delaying, and that'll all happen in due course. I don't want to see any further delay. I want us to get on with it. The process is right, I think. We've had enough questioning around that process to think it's as good as we're going to get right now. And I really thank staff for pulling together what's clearly been a difficult task from a difficult resolution. And I look forward to the next stage, which will give us stuff to really work with. And I hope we proceed as quickly as we can to ensure that we are improving waterways and reducing, preventing whatever we have to do to stop further degradation and to actually improve our waterways. And that's what we're here for. Thank you.
Well, a right of reply to you, Elliot.
Yeah, I had a procedural question first, Richard, but I was just wondering if this case suggested taking them separately, just in case the recommending full council adopt the criteria doesn't pass. Is there a meaningful difference between us going to Mana Whenua and working on this and bringing it to council for full council for adoption at the next meeting, and us coming to and recommending that we adopt it before we come to council meeting?
There are two reasons why I was going to do that, though. One is Mana Whenua, absolutely, but having noted our next council meeting, if this were to come, is after the Mana meeting, or is, I mean, I'm not sure that it would have time to go there anyway, and I understand it isn't on the papers for Mana to Mana. So it's about what level that discussion has had. But that wasn't the only issue I had. It's, yeah.
Is there a difference though in bringing it to the full council meeting, next full council meeting, with us having adopted it or recommended to adopt it in principle, and us not having done that, basically?
Well, the note that work will still happen if it's not adopted, is my understanding. So the difference is whether we have to change our own motion if we want to change it later on when this comes in November, because once council's adopted it, and if this just came to environmental implementation, implementation cannot change that criteria.
Right. So the only difference is that we've got it like locked and loaded, ready to go.
Yeah.
Whereas we'd have to kind of do this again.
Yes. Well, yeah, yeah.
But
well,
as you say, we'd be able to change it as we wanted. Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense? I think that.
Yep. I don't see a massive difference between the two.
Point of clarification.
But
you've just made a summation of what's happened. So are you saying that, and what I want clarified is, if we adopt this,
if we recommend this to council,
let me finish my question, please. If we adopt this criteria and Mana Whenua decide to change the criteria, when will we sit to agree or disagree on their changes?
Their suggestions.
I don't think that Mana Whenua can, if we've adopted them, change our criteria. But to be clear, we are recommending this to council to adopt. We do not have the delegated authority to adopt ourselves, is my advice I've sought. So yeah.
I guess my time.
This is your right of reply. Sorry, thank you for your procedural
That's all
question.
right.
And I'm probably bent every standing order, but Michael's forgiving me because he hasn't interacted.
I don't personally mind whether we take the first one or not, for procedural reasons. But I think in terms of the discussion to leave it on the table and stuff forward, concerns about having not gone to and discussed it with Mana Whenua already. I sort of think that if staff would have already gone to Mana Whenua and discussed it and come to us with that, we would have been complaining around the council table that they've gone to Mana Whenua without council direction and stuff and have started consulting. I think we probably want to show up for something to start working on. I don't mind whether we give that direction as just direction or as a full recommendation or whatever. I don't really care. But if Mana Whenua are unhappy with the process that was brought to them with it, then I'm all ears and happy to have a discussion about that. But until then, it doesn't seem like a good reason to delay this any further. And I think we just need to go ahead and get it done and be ready to approve it in the form that we want to approve it in the next council meeting.
Got it. Okay, now that's the end of the debate. The motions will be put one at a time. The first motion, the recommendation is that so it's not the recommendation, it's the amended motion, is that the Environmental Implementation Committee recommends to council that it adopt the suggested prioritisation criteria in principle. On that is the first part. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? No. Okay, I'm going to call division to make it easier on staff. Sorry. So,
okay, Councillor Forbes. Aye. Councillor Callagher.
No.
Councillor Laws. Councillor Malcolm.
No.
Councillor McCall.
No.
Councillor Newthfin.
Yes.
Councillor Noon.
Aye.
Councillor Robertson. Councillor Scott.
Yes.
Councillor Somerville.
Yes.
Councillor Weir.
Staying
Councillor Wilson.
no.
Councillor Laws.
He's on
The
mute.
vote. It's the vote.
I'll put that as abstained.
Oh, God. It's a tied vote, isn't it?
Can I point of order, just
One, two, three, four,
the
five,
mover
six,
of the motion has been abstained? Is that possible?
Absolutely. You can do anything pro forma. Absolutely. The power of a debate is absolutely appropriate that anyone can put something and change their minds because of debate. That's absolutely proper. I thought that might be the case. Never something that one ever wants to. Yeah. Oh, it loses. I'll put my casting vote no. So that means that we go to the second part, which is
What's the result, sir?
it failed. That we didn't adopt the criteria. We didn't recommend to council to adopt the criteria. So we then go to that the Environmental Implementation Committee notes that the suggested criteria will be discussed with Mana Whenua by Kaha and Te Omarama and applied to produce a draft list of ranked water bodies for further development of actions.
So
So that's just the motion now.
just point of clarification, I noted you left out the have adopted.
Yeah, because
Oh,
it
sorry, because it
was
wasn't
first,
adopted.
it
Thank
wasn't
you.
adopted. So that's thank you. I'm hoping that this is going to get through. All in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Against? Staff, thank you very, sorry, that's Kerry. Thank you very much for your patience and rather interesting debate. But no criticism to you guys at all because it's been very much a piece that 9 of us own. And thank you for putting those together. It's always a difficult one, finding criteria. And what this looks like, we will have plenty of chance to discuss at a later date. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next one is Integrated Catchment Management Program, paper 8.2. No, we may run out of time, and we've, maybe if I say the cup of tea will be after this paper, we might get through it quickly. We'll see how it goes. The paper seeks to approve the program for rollout of integrated catchment management across Otago through the development of the catchment action plans. We've got staff here talking about it with Dr. Palmer, Sophie Fern, the catchment action planner. We've also got Anna Malloy and Libby Caldwell. And I'll just note that we've got also Lloyd here if anyone has questions, because Lloyd has been chairing the program on I don't know, the Integrated Catchment Management Working Party. So I'm sure that he's also able to give any questions should you wish. Sorry, thank you. The recommendation here, just to note, is that we approve. I don't know that we've got delegated authority for that. We recommend to council to approve. If anyone wants to put the motion at some stage, could I please ask staff to introduce or say anything to this? Thank you for the comprehensive report.
So I just have something to say first, and that the author should also include Anna Malloy. So sorry that isn't included. More sorry for Anna. And I'm going to pass over to Sophie to do an introduction to the paper.
Thank you, Libby.
I guess it's really just to take it as read. This will give some clarity to community and to iwi and to us as well as to where we're going to be working next. And so it's just sort of seeking clarity from you all.
Do you want to talk about any of the options that are presented in paragraphs 18, 19 and 20, or your... Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Any questions? Brian.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. My understanding, that some of the key drivers for this list is connecting with the timetable for farm plans and looking at those catchments at the lower end of the river. So my question is through this priority process that we just finished talking about for an hour and a half, is it possible that through that we're going to get new information or, regarding timing and connection and community, that we may want to rejig this list? So you've got option 1, which is agree to the list. Option 2 is to agree to first 3, Catlins, Upper Lakes and Taieri. Is it possible that between now and April 2025, which is just less than 2 years away, they say a year and a half away, that we'll get new information to want to change this list?
Through the chair, yes, I guess that with any work we do, we could receive information where we might need to think about how we reprioritise. So there's always an option that we can consider that. So, but what we're looking for through this paper is some steer from councillors around where we want to focus next. And so at the moment, the proposed order is as it is, and I think that we should consider that, but there will always be information we're receiving on an ongoing basis that will then potentially inform what we might need to change in the future.
Yeah, and through the chair, so it's being flexible in terms of new information coming in versus giving certainty to the community regarding timing. And I think it's your recommendation that certainty is more important than flexibility. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. I think that the certainty for our communities is very important around when we're looking to be coming at the moment. But again, if that need changes, we can be flexible.
Yeah, particularly if I could add the certainty in years 1 and 2, and you'll see on page 18 that we're seeking guidance on the next one to go to, which would be quite soon in the current financial year. So the critical thing is what are numbers 2 and 3, given that Catlins is number 1, but also recognising that this will inform an LTP for the ones that are in the out years.
Yeah. So So what I hear is slightly different. What I'm hearing is that you want certainty around the immediate future as opposed to the long term. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Lord. And sorry, I should have asked if you wanted, as chair of the working party, to say anything as part of the introduction, because I know that the rollout has been part of that sort of thinking as well.
It's just a point of clarification, really, I think, because it talks about the sequence for creating catchment action plans, but in actual fact, it's a sequence for creating integrated catchment working groups in each area. We will then create the catchment action plan. So that's a technical thing. It's not actually. So whether we can have that wording a little bit better would be awesome, because it's the way it reads is that we're creating the catchment action plan on behalf of the community, but this is very much the community creating the catchment action plans. And we also have to understand that although we have a pretty strong focus on water quality, the integrated catchment management system covers a broad range of aspects, not just water quality as one part of it. So you've got all your other stuff as well. So it's like mountains to sea. So it'll bring in the coastal and air and everything in between, and social stuff as well. So I think that's just a point of clarification. I think I'll probably just follow up on what I think Gavin was saying. It's about, yes, we do need clarity. There's been some thought put into it. So there has been processes done. We need clarity for the next two stages, but in reality, because there's so much work happening right now, it may be prudent to just keep our gunpowder dry a little bit for the next ones going forward, because the world things change so fast, and there's so many other programs around. So that's just my feeling, but I think so. My question is, that's how it is. It's creating, developing working groups within the areas to create their plans.
Yeah, that's correct. Very much so. Can I just add to your second point there? The certainty for the next two is ideal. Yes, totally agree. We have had comments just across some discussions, internally and externally, that aligning work programs are sometimes done 3 to 5 years ahead. So a little bit further ahead would be useful for those other work programs. For us, that's fine. I'm just talking about the estuary work from the science team, that kind of thing. So yeah, the next two gives us a good 18 months ahead, but a little bit further would also be really useful.
Thank you. In light of that, should the motion actually be something like recommends to council that they approve the order of creation of catchment specific integrated catchment groups in order as per attachment 1, something along that line?
Option 1.
Option 1 or attachment 1, either or.
It says catchment, it says proposed catchment action plan rollout.
Yeah, I'm just taking your point that it's actually, yeah.
If I just may say that the purpose is to approve a program for the rollout of integrated catchment management across Otago.
Yeah.
And so should the motion not then read recommends to council the proposed integrated catchment management program?
Okay, thank you. Excellent. That's much better. The problem is it doesn't actually, we have to say option 1 or attachment 1, because otherwise it's not so clear, because there are 3 options in the paper. And so we should be referring to either one of the options or to the attachment.
Yes.
Just for clarity.
Yeah.
Those comments, I haven't, do you want to move that?
I'm happy to move.
Thank you.
Move that amended and with option 3.
Option 3.
Option 2.
No, option 3.
Option 3, which gives the next setting on the first 3
So
areas.
can you say which, if it's option 3, suggests or approves, it says a different rollout sequence. Can you give clarity to what that option is?
Environmental catchment system improves it.
That'll be option 2.
No, well, what I'm saying is, so it's option 2, but what I'm saying is, I think we need to confirm the next 2, but then come back to have a decision on where we go to after that, depending on how the first. By then there'll be.
Okay.
So it'll be up and running. The other one will be.
So if you want to say Catlins, Upper Lakes, and Taieri.
Yeah, I'd say those 2. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Does that I just want to give it some clarity. Have staff got any issues with that as far as a work program?
You've heard that we want there's some broader implications around having a direction for the out years in terms of informing other programs and also just helping the community understand where they sort of fit in the overall program. And we do have to populate a long-term plan for the full 10 years. So we do need to know what the option 2 gives a little bit of flexibility and gives the choice that there might be some changes made based on new information or new thinking.
So I'm happy with option 2.
Yeah, but
So
does
option 2 says 3. The
Next, it says next three, which would imply
Oh, okay.
numbers 2, 3, and 4. But if you want to amend.
Sorry, next week, apologies, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sorry. But if you want to amend that to next 2, that would be that clearer for you.
Just so we're clear,
Oh.
Lloyd has moved.
Yeah, so I've moved the integrated catchment management program option
2.
2. Option 2 but only doing the next 2 rather than next 3.
It's an amended option.
Amended option 2, yeah.
That is specifically for 2.
Yeah.
So we need to see if there's a second and a discussion.
Do we have a second for that motion? Thank you, Tim. I've got discussion, but I'm just going to ask staff whether we need to have a report date back in order to I'm worried about when we have to make a decision on the subsequent ones if this is adding that flexibility, but that will just come back as a process. Okay, thank you, sorry. Lloyd, do you want to speak to your motion?
Oh, no, I'm happy.
We've come to Brian.
Actually, it was a question, actually. Well, I'd ask a question.
Well, the motion's been put, but I'll.
Yeah, it was just teasing out this idea of, option 1 versus.
No, we've
option
got
2.
an option 2 on the table. I'm not going to.
Yeah, no,
I'm
I
not going to.
realise that. So, but like the reality is, I suspect when you look at this list that it dovetails with the dates with the RPS. And in fact, it's the 4th column, isn't it, in terms of priority. Actually, that's not entirely true when I look at the diary. I withdraw that. I'll let the debate continue.
Well, I think that's your debate done, unless you want to add to your debate now. You've answered yourself. Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Gretchen.
Just really quickly, thank you for this, and I can see why you would want to signal out into the distance where we're sort of at. However, I can also understand that actually as we develop the land and water plan and other things as well, biodiversity programs, actually it could well change next in another triennium as well. A lot does change. So there's a lot of uncertainty beyond 3 years always in councils. These 3 though are really important, I think, to do first. Catlins, we've kicked off already, and that's really positive. Upper Lakes, Clutha, we're not just talking about freshwater, but in the freshwater space, we've got some highly significant waterways, almost internationally significant lakes. We've got some fantastic biodiversity. We've got engaged communities. I think it's important that we do work there. Tidy as well, similar, really important riverine systems, scroll plains, some really significant biodiversity, very rare ecosystems, engaged communities again, and a few issues as well. It's important we lock these ones in, I think. In terms of the others though as well, another thing that we just need to consider is that we're not sitting back and sort of waiting for however many years it is, 9 years, to do something in these. We've got structured work programs in all of our areas of council within all of these catchments as well. So biosecurity, biodiversity, you name it, air. This is everything in an integrated plan. We are working in those areas so that when we do get to the stage when we're as a community developing an action plan, actually we're going to hit the ground running on a lot of these. So I guess that's a key thing for us to consider is structuring our work program isn't about sitting back and waiting. We're working in a catchment space right through. That's really all I want to say.
Thank you. Alexa.
I'm sorry, but I'm not entirely clear. So we're going from, instead of approving the next 3 to the next 2, right?
Yep.
So we're leaving out the Taieri at the moment?
No, Taieri, so Catlins is already approved, so.
Oh, I see.
So it's,
Thanks, that was the clarity I sought. Yeah, fine, thank
so
you.
it is 3 and that's where I missed it.
Yeah.
Doing that
That's
relates
like wrong at
to-
the start, apologies to staff.
The employee, and then there may be the long-term plan may, or, our.
This is your right of reply. I
No, yeah,
presume.
you go
You-
ahead.
No,
Yeah,
no,
just
no one else has asked
checking
us
that.
questions, so please go for your right of reply.
Oh, so basically, yeah, so my reply basically is, well, we got a plan, it's up and running, it's not tested yet, but it's looking promising. We need to give some certainty for the next 2 stops so we can get the base work starting to be done. And I think we just need to leave ourselves some wiggle room that given the previous item, there might be some other areas that may require, that may be advantageous to go to in a different order to what's been set out. But then it may not as well, but it just gives us that option, and should be a quick decision on the day. So I think good work done so far. It's a new program and it's been very well received. And we just look forward to working with it and with the communities to actually get some great outcomes at the end.
Thank you very much. I'll now put the motion. We're all aware of what it is. It's a recommendation to council to approve option 3, which is, option 2, and modified option 2, which is the next ones being the Upper Lakes and Taieri. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Excellent. Third item, we could do a cup of tea, but seriously, do we need to? I think we're fine. Is staff okay? Sorry, it should be. You're at the end of the table. Do you want to suffer us longer or you?
No, we're good to go.
You're good to go. Thank you. 8.3 Biosecurity Operational Plan Annual Report 2022-23. We've got Murray Boardman on board as well as Dr. Palmer and Libby. Thank you very much. Thank you for your report, Murray. Libby or Murray or?
Yep, I can kick off. So,
Thank you.
We'll take the report as read, but I just wanted to acknowledge all of our biosecurity staff that have contributed to delivering the actions within this report and their expertise and knowledge that they provide us every day. So I just wanted to do that before we start because it's.
Can I reiterate that, and especially as far as rocks go, because I know they're a problem in our area and people don't see them. It's the staff who are picking these things up because they know where to look. There's some really specialist knowledge required to do a lot of this work, and it's stuff that floats under the radar. We see all the frequent alerts of pests and weeds, but actually knowing what that means on the field is quite a different thing. So yeah, thank you for that, Libby. I totally reiterate that. Murray, did you want to? Sorry, did you say Murray had anything to say to it?
No, we'll just take the report as read.
So thank you.
and
Apologies.
We can.
Okay, any questions? So we're dealing, and I should have introduced this better. Today we're dealing with rabbits, plants, leg of siphon, and I can't read my writing on the other one. There was something else we had in there, wasn't it? Exclusion and eradication of pests. Those are the biosecurity measures, and this is a statutory process that we need to adopt or refer this in order to get it to government, the Minister for Biosecurity, within 5 months of the end of the financial year.
Yes, it's a report back on the operational plan that you approved 12 months ago for the year that's just finished.
Yep. So there's a statutory process for that. Yes. Lloyd.
Yeah, hi. I think it's a good report. I quite enjoyed it, but I do have one question because section 11, what does MMS, so it's obviously the scale for ranking rabbit populations.
The modified McLean scale. So
Oh,
that's
we
how
had that earlier, so I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No,
Yeah,
that's fine.
we had that one other day.
Tim's very aware of that.
Yeah. Thank you. You've got a good memory.
One of my first interactions with Tim. Sorry, Alexa, thank you.
I'm just really interested and would like a little bit of explanation around, given the context of rabbit inspections, there's not a substantive difference in the compliance rates between public and private land. Is that something we should be worried about?
Are you referring to table 3?
Oh, no, it's point 12. Yeah, it is table 3.
Um,
Paragraph 12. I just.
I don't think that it's something we should be worried about at the moment, because we've built some really strong relationships with both private and public landowners in the areas that we're working in. So, and we're wanting to support them as much as we can along our journey of compliance. So I don't think that I don't think we have a concern around.
Okay. Is it influenced? Sorry, Kate. No,
this is
a bit further. Is that influenced by the need to work together with private and public, and the fact that you can't actually, the rabbits don't notice the boundary?
That's right.
It is about that.
And working with both private and public organisations or landowners, we need both of them to come on board at the same time. Otherwise, if someone's undertaking control work on a private property and the public can't, then their investment is wasted. So that's why we're trying to support them on the same journey, coordinating when they undertake their control at the same time, so that they are all getting the same benefits. So no, I don't think there's any concern around.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that.
Can I just follow that question up, which is a really good question, is should we be using the long-term plan processes of councils and potentially writing to ministers about funding for this sort of work? Because it's one that often is left off the budgets, and the response when you say you need to do this, oh, we don't have a budget for it.
Mm-hmm.
Since it is long-term plans for TAs, should we be looking at, are there any areas that would be standout areas that we need some action, that we should be ensuring that they're using that process effectively?
So I guess there would be other organisations to consider, such as LINZ and DOC, as well as TAs, but at the moment we're seeing really good uptake of installing rabbit fencing from the TAs, and they have, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but they have managed to find budgets, significant budgets, and there's been a lot of fencing and work undertaken, especially around that Lake Hayes area. I was out there last week seeing all of the work that's been done by both DOC and QLDC. So I think at the moment it's okay. Obviously, any kind of pressure or influence we can have on ensuring that there are budgets so that they can undertake biosecurity work, not just rabbit work. There's a whole lot of other pest plants that could have some more investment made, but just recognising that they have budgets to work with as well.
So it can be a positive submission, though, on the other hand, that things are going well, but we need to ensure that budgets stay and
or that they're increased so that we can do more and more. But so I think the relationships that we have at the moment are influencing those decisions, and some of that comes down to the compliance or regulatory powers that we have, and we can use those if we need to, but we haven't needed to go right into that final stage of compliance yet. So that's a really positive sign, I think, that our relationships are good, and we're seeing the action we expect to see, because the rabbit problem's been here for over 150 years. So it's hard to fix that in 1 year.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for the question, Alexa, that led to that one. So, Andrew.
I just have a question, Olivia, regarding the key performance indicators, and where there's been a bit of a tweak to some of them. I assume we did that at the last annual plan process or whatever. Can you just remind me the benefit of what we've tweaked? Obviously, our performance is heading in the right direction, but I was just wondering whether it was in relation to tweaking those key performance indicators or not.
So I might ask Murray to respond to that question about KPIs and how we've tweaked those to enhance them, so we're able to measure our outputs and outcomes better.
Yes, through the chair. Annually, we are allowed to adapt the operational plan. So the operational plan doesn't have to be the same for every year, that we can modify it to the work program at that time. So that will induce a change to the KPIs that we will be reporting against. And so we, at the present time, for the last 3 years, we've had different KPIs or subtle changes to KPIs to reflect our work program over the last 3 years.
Is that enough?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. The overall rabbit inspections from the previous year to the current year reduced substantially. Was that down to resourcing and the change of direction towards more focused areas?
So the number of inspections we undertook, that your question is that they're lower this year than they were the previous year.
Yeah, 800 versus 500 and something. I think hang on, I'll bring the paper back up.
That is right, yeah. So a lot of our focus in this year has gone towards, in the rabbit space, has gone towards supporting our community rabbit programs. And so that's taken some of our biosecurity resource to get those landowners on the journey and seeing them undertaking that control and their rabbit fencing within those areas. So yes, it's a resourcing, it's a change in how we've resourced that, and that we're not just doing an inspection and then sending a letter, but we're actually providing that support to those different communities so that they can have long-term rabbit management in place, which helps us in the future when they've got good controls in place. We're likely to go back and see that the sites are compliant rather than non-compliant again. So,
okay, great, thank you. The other question was just around, so with the TAs and with government organisations, they have tended to be reactionary based on complaints and then would have a catch-up treatment or action undertaken. Are we seeing them then putting in place ongoing rabbit management as private landowners do, or do they then leave their land to basically replenish?
So our role is to support them to ensure that they have long-term rabbit management plans in place. So we will continually check up on them to make sure that they are undertaking those actions. It's hard to say right now whether they're going to do that in 5 years, because that's kind of up to them with our push to make sure that they do that. But we are seeing the signs that they will be investing in that long term. And a lot of that comes down to the community pressure, is maybe not quite the right word, but community pressure that where we're doing these community rabbit management programs, we need to have those organisations on board, otherwise they're not, the programs won't be successful. And so they're seeing the benefit of that, where we've got regular meetings with the government, the central government organisations, to let them know where our priorities might be going forward. And those are with LINZ. I have a monthly meeting with them, and DOC is a quarterly meeting. And my staff have got regular interactions with the TAs to let them know where those priorities are as well and support them. So the signs are there that they will continue to do that as a private landowner. But time will tell.
Okay, great. No, well, that's very encouraging, and hopefully they will. Thank you. The other quick question was just around lagrosiphon, and is it just me, or is there an apparent reduction in what you can see in lagrosiphon on the lake at the moment? From what I can see around Bendigo and the area down the main stem of the lake, it looks to be reducing.
I don't have the answer to that right now, but I know there's been a lot of control work undertaken in our lakes, and so we can follow up with LINZ, because they undertake the monitoring, surveillance and control work in those areas. So we can follow up with them and see what their surveillance has shown and provide an update at some point.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks very much.
Brian.
Yeah, cool. Just back to the rabbits, if that's okay. Just looking at table 1, where it says that the compliance after re-inspection is 32.9%. And to be honest, I had hoped that number would be higher. We obviously have the ability, in terms of notice of direction, in terms of contractors, to get various outcomes. So my question is, are we doing that? Are we pushing hard enough? Or are we trying to, work constructively with these landowners to get a more sustainable outcome?
Yes, you've just answered your question.
That's okay.
We are working constructively with landowners
One day.
to try and.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think because like we get bad press from time to time and that question will be asked. So there's a plan, we have the levers.
And
we're trying to move forward constructively.
That's a compliance and enforcement policy.
Yeah.
It starts at SOPI.
Yeah. And we want to support long-term Revit management so they don't just do control on a one-off and then forget about it, which is what Councillor Kelleher's question was about for the public organisations. So part of that is that relationship building, and we're working really hard on that relationship building to ensure that all of the landowners or occupiers that are in this process or are non-compliant have the support to get to being compliant, and that in some cases that won't happen overnight, and we acknowledge that it will take sometimes a couple of years for them to get to the point where they might be nearing compliance, because as I said before, it's a 150-year-old problem that we're trying to solve.
I mean, do we, in terms of numbers, as a matter of interest, in terms of new inspections, re-inspection, do we have target numbers that we're aiming for, or are we just sort of seeing how it goes?
So through our operational plan, we've got targets of the number of inspections that we undertake, and we've also got KPIs around when we need to do our re-inspections.
No, around the percentage compliance that we're aiming for.
No, we don't have KPIs, correct me if I'm wrong, Murray, around the level of compliance, because sometimes that's out of our control.
I know it's out of our control, but surely we'll have some targets that we're aiming for. Like we're spending the money.
Goal.
What's that? So what's the goal?
Is the RPMP give you that you want to be below a certain modified McLean scale, and that is the target?
So within the regional pest management plan, we have an objective for sustained control of rabbits, and then within that there's rules that landowners need to have to be compliant. They need to be at a level, modified McLean scale level of less than 3.
Yeah, no, I realise that, but it still comes down to percentages. So the target is McLean 3, but are we aiming for, like currently this year it was 73.6% compliance, like for somebody that's here in 5 years' time, are we aiming for 90%?
We haven't set a target.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to maybe have a think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Gretchen.
Yes, the PES plan kind of sets targets in the way that we categorise what we're aiming for there as well. But sorry, the question was my iPad's going full bore in the wrong direction, flicking through millions of pages on its own. But anyway, I'll remember the question, but perhaps not the exact statistical figure. But what is the summary of the issue with achieving compliance, well, not compliance, it's our KPI target, given that we achieved 62% and previous year we achieved slightly less than that. I know the report details some areas, but is there a summary of why is it difficult for us to achieve our KPIs, and do we need to think about that as we go forward if it's an ongoing thing?
Yeah, so I guess we don't have a summary other than the appendix that's being provided. Appendix 1 has got got details into the why some of those weren't achieved or were partially achieved. And I guess for me, I'm constantly thinking about how we can reach our targets as best we can. Some of those were timing issues, so they weren't met fully, but we'd done some of the work. So we can't tick something off to say we've completed it when we haven't fully completed or done exactly what the KPI was reflected in. I guess that's if we look at that table, figure 1 in appendix 1 on page 32, it shows the 62.9% of our KPIs being achieved and 30% and then 30.6% being partly achieved. So there's not a whole lot that aren't being achieved. There's work to do in around our timing and making sure we are ticking off those things as quickly as we can and meeting those timeframes. And sometimes our timeframes probably weren't quite right when we were creating our operational plan. So we those will be things we'll be working on going forward.
Right, thank you.
Given.
So just on that one, so we have got, you've got a list of why things didn't happen somewhere.
Yeah, it's attached in there as appendix one.
Yeah, no, that's, I've read that one. Good. So on paragraph 30, notice of directions. So you've had 21 issued, which one's actually gone out of shoot or tidied themselves up and is now compliant. And you say the remaining properties will be inspected during the next year to determine their progress. But is there an interim step? We actually get a plan from them to say that what they're doing, or that they're taking notice of our notice?
Yes, so our officers hand deliver those notices of direction, and so they have generally met with the landowners or occupiers while they're on site and have had that correspondence previously. So they are expecting this to be coming most of the time. Where we can, we'll work with them to develop a rabbit management plan and check in with them to make sure that they are ready to do their control work, whatever that looks like, if it's poisoning or shooting, whichever option they're going to be taking, so that ideally they would be compliant with that notice of direction at the time that it was due.
Yeah. So if we do this re-inspection, nothing's happened, so what's our next step if we've got someone that just isn't doing it?
Yeah, so next step would be to consider whether we move to the next step and if it is the right thing to do. So there'll be lots of criteria that we assess, but one example could be we go to a property and it was a level 5 and now they're a level 4. So they're close to being compliant, but they're not quite, and they've done some work. So should we then take that next step, which is default work, where ORC would engage a contractor to go and do control on this property? Or do we look at supporting them further, giving them an extension of time so that they can become compliant on their own?
Yeah.
So we need to weigh that up, but we do have a next step.
Yeah. So on the other side of that, if they are still at 5 and not wanting to get below 5, that's your next step you can take. Good as gold. Thank you.
Tim?
Just my questions around the shared pest programs. And just an observation on the Otago Peninsula of the non-compliant rabbit inspections seem to be quite a few purple dots on the peninsula. Do we share? Are we helping out in any way with the Halo project or any of those other DCC projects?
Yeah, so we have got a community program on the peninsula where we're working with landowners and occupiers there to support them to be compliant through direct support from our staff and supporting them to create rabbit management plans, which would then indicate what kind of control they would like to take. We've also provided funding to the Otago Peninsula Biodiversity Group to support this work around rabbit management as well. So the Halo project is slightly different in that they don't have a focus on rabbits, they've got a focus on mustelids and possums. But obviously there's kind of an interaction there between, if you remove all of the stoats on the peninsula, what happens to the rabbits? So we are working together on what that looks like.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Andrew.
Thanks, Madam Chair. The pesky wallaby, I'm not the ones that at Carisbrook last week. Sorry, Carisbrook, also Glass Stadium, sorry.
You voted for it.
Thanks for reminding me. Great decision, Kate. I've lost my train of thought. But anyway, I want to paint a picture for you because I had some feedback, and tell me if I'm on the wrong track or not. But pests obviously vary. A plant doesn't move around like a wallaby. Rabbits probably don't go as far as wallabies. But with a wallaby, and because they're on the eradication hit list, so to speak, contact was made about a wallaby sighting, and the feedback from ourselves was submit a wallaby control management plan. So the person who was told that sort of thought, well, is that the best way to handle a control of that type of pest where they could probably deal with it either that night, the following morning, or whatever. But they were just concerned that they had to follow a process that they thought was perhaps a little clumsy, a little unadaptable to the actual issue. Have I got that wrong?
Yeah, I'm unsure of that process. That's not a process that I'm aware of. So if you've got detail and can pass that on, I can follow up with that person, and that should not have been our response if it was. If they're within an area where we are undertaking our national wallaby control program, then we would engage contractors to go out and monitor the area or survey the area and then undertake control. Also within our PMP, I think the rule allows landowners to control the wallaby themselves, actually asks for that to happen. So our advice should not have been that they needed to do that. But if you let me know, I can follow up.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
You'd happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. I'm happy to second.
Don't need to talk.
I do want to talk to it because I thank you, because I didn't ask a question. So thank you for all the work, team. It's great. I was actually going to add a recommendation, or as part of C, to congratulate the government on the rather optimistic eradication moves on Mycoplasma bovis. I think biodiversity is sort of one of those, it's one of those things that has to be done. It is absolutely important that that work has happened for the economy of Otago.
Biosecurity.
Biosecurity, sorry, did I say biodiversity? Yeah. I always get that word wrong. Sorry, it's, in my head it was biosecurity. It's a different minister. Because I think it's a nice feedback to give. It's a, would it be okay with the mover?
Yeah.
I know it's not our gig part, but it is our economy that would be affected had that spread worse. And also to the good humour referencing the wallabies and sharing that reporting of 23 wallabies at Forsyth Bar was great comms. So those were the two things I wanted to speak about. You're happy with that motion? Did you get that slight adoption? I know it's that we see
okay.
On C. Is it the? No, it's I think it's. Sorry.
I have 3 parts. Noting.
Noting.
So that's the recommendation.
Yeah, sorry, who's got it here?
You want to add the 4th?
Well, I was going to do it to the one for the biosecurity. Notes that the report and the attached biosecurity operational plan report will be provided to the Minister for Biosecurity as required, and congratulate them on the work on Mycoplasma bovis for the government on the work. Yeah, for the Listen, thank you. No other one wants to speak to that. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, team, for great work. You can all have time off now. I'm sorry, I need to finish with a karakia. Kia tū te rangamai Māori ki runga in na iwi o te ao. Peace reign and on all peoples of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.